welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and I am so excited for this conversation. I'm here with an absolutely fantastic writer who is here to talk about the third book that they have released so far, and it is a banger all around. It is such a wild ride, and I am having a great time with it. So welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yes, and thank you so much for those kind words. I am CJ Leede, and I'm the author of this third book, Headlights. And Headlights, folks are waking up on the side of the highway with no memory of how they got there, naked, except they're wearing the skin of someone they've allegedly never met, and they have a human hair tied around their tongues. And the very tortured special agent who was assigned to the case previously now has to come back to Colorado and face a lot of things he doesn't want to face in his own life in order to solve the case before more people die. And as the clues kind of start to point closer to home, he has to really come to terms with some of his personal ghosts. And I'll leave it at that.
Before we get to Headlights itself, I'd love to ask you a little bit about your background and your journey as a writer. I am particularly interested in two things. I know that you studied a little bit of medieval history at NYU, which I did as well. And I understand that you are a Trekkie, which I am also. So I'd love to know about how these things feature in your sort of development as a writer.
You're my people. I love that. Yeah, so for medieval studies, I had a medieval studies minor in undergrad, and I went to a school at NYU where you make your own concentration, and my concentration was called mythology, history and theory, and then the medieval studies minor. I was very interested in story. I didn't think I was going to be a writer. I kind of stumbled into that later. I really wanted to be a career medievalist, actually. Um, and medieval studies is so cool, as you know, which a lot of people don't realize this because it's such a broad, like within medieval studies, there's literature, there's art history, obviously languages are a huge component of it, but like there are so many aspects, history, of course, but like it's all of the things of a time period. It's not any one thing. So I found that to be amazingly fun and is not that different from what I'm doing now, actually. It's just sort of interrogating story and playing with story. And then yeah, Star Trek. I mean, I just Trekkies know, like you have a bad day, you go turn on Star Trek. Star
Mhm.
Trek explores every aspect of human experience in, I would say, incredibly profound ways. It's been a hugely important show in our history of humanity for getting diversification in Hollywood, for allowing people to sort of like reckon with like really difficult concepts and about our place here. And there's every kind of episode. There are romance episodes and horror episodes and so much adventure. And I think Trekkies, like horror readers, are just like some of the most kind-hearted people out there. And yeah, I just love it. I go to Star Trek Con every year. I'm a big fan.
Oh, that's so cool. And hearing you talk about both the medieval studies and Star Trek together really makes me realize that, even though one's in the far-flung past and one's in the far-flung future, they're both really interesting lenses for examining our modern world, right? Because I think the medieval is a lot more present than perhaps we even care care to acknowledge. And
Yeah.
Star Trek is just such a vehicle for examining the issues of our time.
Yeah, I mean that's totally what it is. And my real interest was like high versus popular religion in medieval Europe and especially the far west of that area. And I think that's something we come up against a lot. I think it's very interesting, and it's a huge part of human culture. These things don't go away. Nothing goes away.
Yep, yeah, never
There's
does.
no linear progression.
Time's a flat circle and all that.
Yeah.
So speaking of, what was the inception point for Headlights? Did it start with a character or a mood or a theme you wanted to explore?
I used to walk 2 miles every day to an office in Santa Monica where I was living at the time, and I was working on American Rapture edits. And I remember one day I was about halfway through my walk, and this like image hit me of these people waking up on the side of the highway, and I was like, "That's crazy. Is that something?" And I sort of let that exist. And then this guy started to come to me, and I just started to see this character, and I just started to feel this sort of pain from him. And probably what it was me trying to process a lot of loss and grief in my life. And that's really what this whole book is. The whole book is kind of the question of like, what is death and what is this sort of mortality thing that we're living with, and how do we survive all these losses? Because the people we love are going to die and we're going to die, and we don't know in what order that's going to happen. And so somebody's surviving somebody else, and how do we deal with that? And that's kind of what this whole book is. And not to make it sound like a total downer, but yeah, I was struggling with that question, and writing the book really helped me come to terms with death in a new way, which is sort of amazing.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And I think we all do. What I think gets stuck in my brain about death and what I love to see explored through all types of literature is that it's literally like the most universal thing, the least fathomable thing. Like, even though it is bound to happen to everyone and you're going to witness it in your life and deal with it, it's just like impossible to wrap your head around. And I think that like literature is sort of uh, our best and most beautiful ways of trying to grapple with that.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, we literally will all do it. So I think it's a beautiful thing actually to talk about it and sit with it, because it's very present in our lives.
Could you tell us a little bit about developing Special Agent Daniel Stansfield as a character? He is a dark character. There's a lot of darkness that you experience, sort of like living in his head for a little bit. But
Yeah.
he's also so funny. He is very, very funny. I particularly love his relationship with his new partner, which, I can let you get into all that. But can you talk about, yeah, what went into shaping him?
Yeah, these boys. Um, I mean, to me, like I kind of view all my characters as like, they're not my kids, but kind of. And he's like the sensitive sweetie, like he's really like he's just had such a rough go of it in life. And he really struggles with post-traumatic stress. And there's a big question. This is not a spoiler, I don't think, but there's a big question throughout the book is like he sees physical manifestations of this stress and trauma. And he's sort of asking himself at various times, like, are those things real? Or are they just me not being able to deal with like the things that I've lived through? And to me, I don't know that there's really a difference. I mean, it's all pain and it's all experience. But yeah, I love in books exploring different types of relationships. So, like, I like my main characters to have a friend, at least one family member, a romantic interest, like rivals, people they admire but maybe don't know, all of these things because this is again like all part of human life and all these relationships, like the sum of them is what makes life here so special. So, this is slight spoilery, but it's the first however many pages of the book. It's early on. So, plug your ears if you really are a stickler. But when he gets back to Colorado to like deal with this case, his partner assigned to it is the guy now living with his ex-wife. And he's like so annoying, like personal kryptonite to Daniel. And I had so much fun with that.
The dynamic is great, and I love that, Nat isn't X-Files fan and like a sort of conspiracy
Yeah.
theorist because I was like, yeah, that was, I almost went down that road for a little while. That was like I was a huge X-Files
Who
fan and I
hasn't?
was really annoying about it, but like and I think it's just like the humor works so well as character traits for both of them, like that dynamic between them, what it tells you about the both of them. And also like for how it allows you to manipulate like the horror aspects. Like I'm always really interested in how horror and humor work together. People tend to think about humor as like softening the horror, but I also think sometimes that it can like make it land a little harder too.
I think so. I think anything that's not the horror itself can make the horror land harder. I love playing with that.
I'd love to talk about the Colorado setting and how that shapes the mood, and also the way that like I think you deal with like the legacy of encountering texts, encountering media that is important to us as children, and how that shapes our worldviews, media that was important to our parents, our family, stuff like that, and the Colorado of it all, and the relationships to media and how that affects our upbringing and worldviews. It all contributes so much to the mood. So I don't think I achieved a question in that, but I hope something in there made sense that you can respond to.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, there are a few pieces. One is, I think you're right. I think what we come across when we're young, in the same way that, kids who experience trauma kind of carry that forever. Like you're so malleable as a kid. You're such a sponge. And so everything around you is so informative. And I had musician parents growing up, and I grew up, two of my parents were performing active, like career musicians. And so, like, I grew up in music venues and bars and like carrying the tip jar for my mom around, and it was awesome. And I knew all the bar owners in Austin. And I think like the things that my parents were interested in, their music, the things they would put on TV, the things I would hear other people say when I was in those kind of music spaces, like all of that really stuck with me and like probably really has informed who I am. You listen to everything as a kid, or at least I did. And as far as Colorado goes, like I grew up going there. I have family out there. So it was this kind of like I never lived there full time, but I was there probably 4 times a year my whole life. And so as this kind of like second or third home state in a way. But it always felt a little, for some reason, Colorado always felt a little impenetrable to me. And I don't know if it was the literal cold of winter, or because I grew up in Texas, or if it was the mountains seemed a little bit frightening to me as a kid. I was always a little scared of like mountain sports, which is funny because now it's like my favorite thing. So there was like a fear aspect, but also it's like obviously the most beautiful place anywhere. People come from all over the world to see Colorado. And so to me, it was the perfect arena to tackle some of these questions of like what is death and what remains, because the landscape is formidable and is cold, and it, can take your life. And we know that it has throughout history. With obviously there were lots of mining things that happened there, and there is a history of cannibalism and ghosts and all kinds of stuff with Colorado. But at the same time, it's so beautiful. And so, like, mysterious, beautiful, wild, and all of that was exactly kind of what I felt like I needed to deal with these questions. Did I kind of answer that?
You did a beautiful job with an absolutely
Okay.
incoherent set of ideas. So well done. Yeah. That was really, I really set you up there. That was a tough one. So I
No, you're
appreciate that.
great.
Yeah, because I've never been to Colorado myself, but I grew up sort of with an image of it shaped by two things, which were, Stephen King
Yep.
and Mork and Mindy. And they both
Oh,
made Colorado seem so, as you say, beautiful, but also deeply weird and scary in
yeah.
some ways. And I think that contrast is so productive. And it really also just so beautifully sets the mood for like a loving, like thriller-esque procedural, like it's just really a great mood setter for like the investigation and for
Yeah.
the headspace of all the characters.
Yeah, and this feeling that the landscape is always bigger than the people in it, especially and that feels so present when you're up against the Rocky Mountains, and at the very edge of the Great Plains, which stretch pretty much across this country. And so and that's what death is. That's what mortality is. It's like it's all so much bigger than us, and yet we're playing out all of our sort of like very human dramas, which matter equally, I think. I think it all matters equally.
Absolutely. And to your point about, the the music and the shows and all that we grow up with because our parents were experiencing them, they become sort of like doubly important to us, I think.
Yeah.
Because there's the one where we're experiencing our own like personal nostalgia for our childhoods, where it's like, oh, it's connected to all of these feelings from when I was young and the world was like in some ways simpler, but some ways much more complicated because you don't understand it fully. But then also, I think there's a point too, and maybe it's because of where I am in my life, where I revisit that stuff with the eye of like trying to understand my parents a little bit better too, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And I think it's inevitable, but I have good parents, so I don't know. I think and which is just the biggest privilege there is. Um but it's at least for me, it has become very clear, like at every stage, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Like I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have been so harsh
Yeah.
about whatever, when you're a kid or a teen. Human beings just really doing their best and often doing really a wonderful job.
The process of, seeing them as full human beings, I think,
Yeah.
as our sort of childhood senses of who they were kind of give way to reality as we perceive it as adults.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wild journey and everybody tells you you'll go through it and then you really go through
Yep.
it.
So my last question, I'm worried it's going to be another tough one, but I'm going to do my best. Um, so I'd really love to ask you about how you write about or how you use together sex and horror. There's a
Yeah.
really load-bearing sex scene or erotic scene here, and without giving too much away, I'm curious about what guides you because I think with both horror and sex, what you show and what you don't show is really important.
Yeah. I think the annoying answer I will give is that like I kind of do it by feel in terms of like what to show and not to show. Like if I'm writing it and I feel like and I came up against this a lot with Maeve with some of the violence, my first book, and because it was like a more extreme horror, I guess. But I think, there were scenes where I thought I could do that. I could go fully into detail, but I don't need to. The reader knows, and maybe that's worse. And or maybe I personally myself like don't maybe I don't want to do it. Maybe I can't do it,
That's
Maybe. In terms of the sex scenes, yeah, I think I love that dance of deciding how much to keep on the page and how much to sort of leave to the imagination and at what point to sort of dip in and out. I read like 100 romance novels a year of all types, like paranormal, rom-coms, whatever. I love all of it. I love the weird stuff. And I think these writers are brilliant knowing exactly what to show and what not to show. I think it's an incredible art. And I think, like death, sex is a big part of life for a lot. Well, death is for everybody.
Mhm.
Sex is for a lot of people. And, I've always felt like I don't know why it wouldn't be in my books. But yeah, this scene you're talking about is like 20 pages long. And I really thought my editor was going to make me cut it down. And funny enough, it was like the only scene in the whole book I didn't have to cut down. She was like,
Wow.
you can keep it, no problem. So, so, sometimes it pays off to just go, can I say go balls to the wall with
Yeah,
it?
do it. Yeah.
Feels like the right phrase. I don't
Ugh,
know, it kind of, hello, audience.
yeah. It's really, it is like, yeah, magisterial almost. And I think it's really a great a thing to point to, when I think that there's like a little bit of a current strain in the online discourse that like sex is adornment or
Yeah.
sort of like irrelevant or unnecessary. And it is allowed to be all those things and it can
Yep.
be, but I think it's also like that's not how we treat it in our lives, usually some, depending on who we are, that and it gives you a more nuanced view of a character, of relationships. Because I think to your point about earlier about the supporting characters and showing your protagonist interacting with a range of people, we're always different people to everybody
Yeah.
that we encounter. And it's
Yeah.
like how we experience an entire protagonist through all of these different experiences, touchstones.
It's so true. And I mean, I think, as you're saying, we can learn everything about two people. I love a sex scene because they're typically not speaking, or at least mostly not speaking. And so it's like two people in total interaction with each other, sharing space, being quite literally vulnerable. And I think, frankly, there are about a million ways to utilize that to push a plot forward, which hopefully I did here. But yeah, it was a fun scene.
Oh, so
Fun
good.
scene to write.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this book with me and with our listeners. What is on your horizon? I know, like you are deep into promoting this one. It's about to come out any week now. Are you also writing right now or?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I feel like I'm spamming everybody, just posting about headlights every day. So apologies if, if you've been following along. Yeah, the book comes out June 9th, and then I've got a tour. And typically I don't write on tour, but I kind of get the sense I will this time. I've got my fourth book is a New York City book. And it's kind of like, in fact, incorporates a little bit of my degree. So hopefully you'll approve. I did a lot with Joan of Arc in school, and that's kind of coming back into this new book for me. So that's very fun.
Oh, fantastic. That is excellent to hear.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good time. And then yeah, I've already kind of started drafting my fifth book too. So it keeps rolling on.
Great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us, and I am so excited to share this with us. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a really fun chat.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, listeners. Please check out Headlights. As we record, it's coming out in a couple weeks, but when you hear this, it'll be out in the world freshly, newly. So please head to your favorite bookstore, library, website, wherever you like to go for books. Do you have a favorite bookstore you like to send folks to for books?
Oh my gosh, there's so many, but definitely I would just say, if you can't get anything in person, at an indie bookshop.org is really awesome, and also going to your libraries is really awesome. And if you're an audiobook fan, I got literally like my favorite audiobook reader of all time is doing this book, and so Libro FM and Libby. So there you go.
Love that. I love when people boost the audiobooks because it's yes, lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm an audiobook girl. No, no shame. It's the best.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us again. It is now time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.